My name is Jake Morrison, and I've been riding the trails of West Texas for the better part of 20 years. I'm 42 years old, weathered by sun and wind, with calloused hands that know the weight of a rope and the feel of a horse's reins. I own a small ranch about 15 miles outside the town of Cedar Creek, where I raise cattle and horses, living a simple life that suits me just fine. I never married, never had children of my own, and I've always been content with my solitary existence. The open range is my church, my horsebuck is my most trusted companion, and the stars are my ceiling most nights. It's a good life, an honest life, and I've never wanted for anything more. But on this scorching hot day in July 1887, my simple life was about to become anything but simple. I was riding back from Cedar Creek. After selling a small herd of cattle to the railroad company, the transaction had gone well, and I had a decent amount of money in my saddlebags, enough to get me through the winter and maybe make some improvements to the ranch. I was in good spirits, looking forward to getting home and tending to my remaining stock. The sun was beating down mercilessly, and even Buck was feeling the heat. We'd been riding for about 2 hours when I decided to stop by Willow Creek to let my horse drink and rest in the shade. It was a spot I'd used many times before, a small grove of cottonwood trees beside a reliable stream, about halfway between town and my ranch. As we approached the creek, I heard something that made me pull up short. It was the sound of crying. Not the crying of an adult, but the desperate, heartbroken sobs of a child. I dismounted and tied Buck to a low branch, then followed the sound deeper into the grove. What I found there made my blood run cold and my fists clench in anger. There, tied to the trunk of a large cottonwood tree, was a little girl. She couldn't have been more than 8 or 9 years old, with tangled brown hair and a face streaked with tears and dirt. Her wrists were bound with rough rope that had already begun to chafe her skin, and she was dressed in a tattered dress that had seen better days. But what made me angriest was the sign hanging around her neck. Written in crude letters on a piece of cardboard, it read, "THIEF, stole bread, let her starve." "Jesus Christ," I muttered, immediately moving to untie her. The little girl looked up at me with wide, frightened eyes. "Please, Mr. She whispered. "I didn't mean to steal, I was just so hungry." "Easy there, little one," I said gently, working to untie the knots. "Nobody's going to hurt you." "What's your name?" "Lucy," she said in a small voice. "Lucy Mae." "Well, Lucy Mae, I'm Jake Morrison, and I'm going to get you out of here." The ropes were tight and the knots were deliberately difficult to untie. Whoever had done this had wanted to make sure the child couldn't escape. As I worked, I could see the rope burns on her wrists and the exhaustion in her young face. "How long have you been here, Lucy?" "Since yesterday morning," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Mr. Garrett caught me taking bread from his store," he said. "I needed to learn a lesson." "Mr. Garrett did this to you?" "Yes, sir. He said thieves needed to be punished, and maybe if I stayed here long enough, I'd learn not to steal." I felt my anger rising. Harold Garrett owned the general store in Cedar Creek, and he was known for being a hard man. But this was beyond cruel. This was torture of a child. "Lucy, where are your parents? Where's your family?" The little girl's eyes filled with fresh tears. "I don't have any family, sir. Mama died of the fever last winter, and Papa went away after that," he said. "He couldn't take care of me anymore." "So you've been living on your own?" "Yes, sir. I've been sleeping in the old barn behind the church, and I try to find work when I can. But sometimes there's no work, and I get so hungry. "So you took some bread?" "Just a small loaf, sir. I was going to pay for it when I got some money. I swear I was." Finally, I got the ropes untied and helped Lucy to her feet. She was unsteady, weak from hunger and dehydration. I could see she was in bad shape. "When's the last time you ate something?" 2 days ago, Mrs. Henderson gave me some leftover biscuits and water. I had some from the creek this morning, but I couldn't reach it very well with my hands tied. I helped her over to the creek and let her drink her fill, then gave her some jerky from my saddlebags. She ate it like she was starving, which I suppose she was. "Lucy," I said, "I'm going to take you back to town and have a word with Mr. Garrett about what he did to you." "No, please," she said, grabbing my arm. "He'll just punish me worse. He said if anyone untied me before he came back, he'd make sure I never stole again." "What did he mean by that?" "I don't know, sir, but he had a mean look in his eyes when he said it." I studied the little girl's frightened face and made a decision that would change both our lives forever. "Lucy, how would you like to come home with me? I've got a ranch not far from here, plenty of food, and a warm place to sleep. You'd do that for me, even though I'm a thief?" "You're not a thief, Lucy. You're a hungry child who took food to survive. There's a big difference." "But what if Mr. Garrett comes looking for me?" "Let me worry about Mr. Garrett." I helped Lucy up onto Buck behind me, and we rode toward town. But instead of going to the general store, I went straight to the sheriff's office. Sheriff Tom Bradley was a good man, fair and honest, and I'd known him for years. When I walked into his office with Lucy, he took one look at her rope wrists and the fear in her eyes, and his expression darkened. "Jake, what's going on here?" "I found this little girl tied to a tree out by Willow Creek. Harold Garrett put her there as punishment for stealing bread." "He did what?" I told him the whole story, and I could see the sheriff's anger growing with every word. That son of a bitch, he muttered. Pardon my language, little miss. Jake, this is beyond the pale. You can't tie a child to a tree and leave her to die. That's what I thought. What are you going to do about it? I'm going to have a long talk with Harold Garrett, and I'm going to make sure he understands that this kind of behavior won't be tolerated in my town. What about Lucy here? She's got no family, no place to go. Sheriff Bradley looked at the little girl with sympathy. Well, there's the orphanage over in San Antonio. I suppose we could arrange for her to go there. No, I said firmly. I want to take her home with me. Jake, you sure about that? Taking care of a child is a big responsibility? I'm sure. What do you know about raising a little girl? I'll learn. The sheriff studied my face for a moment, then nodded. All right, Jake, but we'll need to make it legal. I'll draw up some papers making you her guardian. That's fine by me. While the sheriff prepared the paperwork, I took Lucy to the doctor to have her wrists looked at. Doc Patterson cleaned and bandaged the rope burns and gave her a thorough examination. She's malnourished and dehydrated, he told me, but otherwise healthy. A few good meals and some rest, and she'll be fine. But Jake, this child has been through a trauma. She's going to need patience and understanding. She'll get both. After we finished at the doctor's office, I took Lucy to the general store. I wanted to have that conversation with Harold Garrett. Garrett was a thin, sour-faced man in his 50s, with cold eyes and a perpetual scowl. When he saw Lucy with me, his expression grew even darker. What's that little thief doing here? He demanded. Her name is Lucy, and she's with me now. I said calmly, you had no right to untie her. She was being punished for stealing. She's a hungry child who took a piece of bread. That doesn't deserve torture. Torture. I was teaching her a lesson about the consequences of theft. By tying her to a tree and leaving her to die, she wouldn't have died. I was going to check. On heroin, after she died of thirst or heat stroke. Garrett's face reddened. You don't understand, Morrison. These street children are like wild animals. If you don't show them who's boss, they'll take everything you have. She's not a wild animal. She's a little girl who lost her parents and was trying to survive. That's not my problem. It is now. Because if you ever lay a hand on this child again, or any other child for that matter, you'll answer to me. And trust me, Garrett, you don't want that. Garrett looked at me with hatred, but he also looked scared. He knew I meant what I said. Fine, he said. Take the little thief, but don't come crying to me when she steals you blind. I bought supplies for Lucy, new clothes, shoes, some food for the road, and we left the store. As we walked back to where I'd left Buck, Lucy looked up at me with wonder in her eyes. Mr. Morrison, why are you being so kind to me? Because everyone deserves kindness, Lucy, especially children. But I'm nobody special. I'm just an orphan. You're special. To me? Why? I thought about how to answer that. The truth was, I didn't fully understand it myself. Something about this little girl had touched my heart in a way I'd never experienced before. Maybe it was her courage in the face of cruelty, or her dignity despite her circumstances. Or maybe it was just that she needed someone to care about her, and I needed someone to care about, because everyone needs someone, Lucy, and maybe we need each other. We rode back to my ranch in comfortable silence, Lucy holding tight to my waist as Buck carried us through the Texas countryside. As we approached my property, I tried to see it through her eyes. The ranch wasn't much to look at. A small wooden house, a barn, some corrals, and about 1,000 acres of grazing land. But it was home, and now it would be her home too. Is this where you live? Lucy asked, as we rode up to the house. This is it. What do you think? It's beautiful, she said with genuine wonder. I've never had a real home before. Well, you do? Now? I helped her down from Buck and showed her around the property. She was fascinated by everything. The horses, the cattle, the chickens I kept for eggs. She'd clearly never been on a ranch before. Can I help with the animals? She asked. Of course. But first, let's get you cleaned up and fed. I drew her a bath and gave her the new clothes I'd bought in town. While she bathed, I prepared a simple meal. Beans, cornbread, and some canned peaches. It wasn't fancy, but it was filling. When Lucy came out of the bathroom, she looked like a different child, clean and dressed in new clothes, with her hair brushed and her face washed. She was actually quite pretty. But more than that, she looked hopeful for the first time since I'd found her. Feel better? I asked. Yes, sir. Thank you. Lucy, you don't have to call me sir. Jake will do just fine. Yes. See. Yes. Jake. We sat down to eat, and I watched as Lucy devoured her food. She was clearly still hungry, so I gave her seconds, then thirds. Finally, she sat back with a contented sigh. That was the best meal I've ever had, she said. It was just beans and cornbread, but it was made with kindness. That makes all the difference. Her words hit me harder than I expected. This little girl, who had been through so much, still had the capacity to see goodness in the world. She had a wisdom beyond her years, born of hardship but tempered with hope. Lucy, I said, I want you to know that you're safe here. This is your home now, for as long as you want it to be. Really, you won't send me away. Never. We're family now. Tears filled her eyes, but they were tears of joy this time. I've never had a family before, not a real one. Well, you do now. That night, I gave Lucy my bed and made myself a pallet on the floor. She was exhausted from her ordeal, and she fell asleep almost immediately. I lay awake for a long time, listening to her peaceful breathing and thinking about how my life had just changed. I'd gone from being a solitary rancher to being responsible for a little girl. I didn't know the first thing about raising a child, especially a girl who had been through trauma, but I was determined to learn, determined to give her the life she deserved. As I finally drifted off to sleep, I thought about the sign that had been hanging around Lucy's neck. Thief, it had said, but I knew better. Lucy wasn't a thief. She was a survivor, a fighter, a little girl with a heart full of love, just waiting for someone to love her back. And I was going to be that someone. The first few weeks with Lucy were both challenging and rewarding. I quickly learned that caring for a 9-year-old girl was vastly different from managing cattle and horses. Lucy had needs I'd never considered: emotional needs, educational needs, and the simple need for stability and security. She was remarkably resilient. Considering what she'd been through during the day, she followed me around the ranch, eager to help with chores and learn about ranch life. She had a natural affinity for animals, and they seemed to sense her gentle nature. The horses in particular took to her immediately. "Jake," she said one morning as we were feeding the horses, "why do you think animals like me?" "Because you're kind to them. Animals can sense that." Mr. Garrett said I was bad. He said I had a black heart. Mr. Garrett was wrong about a lot of things. "Lucy, you don't have a black heart. You have one of the biggest, kindest hearts I've ever seen." "How do you know?" "Because of the way you treat everything around you. The way you talk to the horses, the way you're gentle with the chickens, the way you always ask if you can help. That's not what someone with a black heart does." Lucy smiled at that, and I could see some of the doubt in her eyes fade away. But the nights were harder. Lucy had nightmares, often waking up crying and calling out for her mother. I would sit with her until she fell back asleep, sometimes telling her stories about the ranch or singing old cowboy songs I remembered from my youth. "Jake," she said one night after a particularly bad dream, "do you think my mama can see me now?" "I think she can, Lucy, and I think she's proud of the brave little girl you've become." "Do you think she's mad at me for stealing?" "No, honey. I think she understands that you were just trying to survive. And I think she's grateful that you found your way to someone who cares about you." "Do you really care about me?" "More than you know." As the weeks turned into months, Lucy began to blossom. She gained weight, her nightmares became less frequent, and she started to show the curiosity and energy that should be natural in a child her age. But I realized she needed more than just food and shelter. She needed education and social interaction with other children. The nearest school was in Cedar Creek, about a 3-hour ride each way. It wasn't practical for Lucy to make that trip daily, but I knew she needed to learn to read and write properly. She could manage basic reading, but her education had been sporadic at best. I decided to teach her myself, at least until I could figure out a better solution. I ordered books from the catalog and set up a small classroom area in the house. Every evening after chores, we would sit together and work on reading, writing, and arithmetic. Lucy was a quick learner, hungry for knowledge in the same way she'd been hungry for food. She absorbed everything I taught her and always wanted to learn more. "Jake," she said one evening as we worked on her letters, "why is education so important?" "Because it gives you choices, Lucy. The more you know, the more you can do with your life. You don't have to be limited by your circumstances." "What do you mean?" "I mean that you can be anything you want to be. A teacher, a doctor, a businesswoman. Education opens doors." "Could I really be a doctor, if that's what you want? And you're willing to work for it, then yes." Her eyes lit up with possibility. "I'd like to help people who are hurt, like Doc Patterson helped me." "Then that's what you should work toward." But as much as I enjoyed teaching Lucy, I knew she needed more than I could provide. She needed to be around other children, to learn social skills and make friends. The isolation that suited me wasn't good for a growing child. The solution came from an unexpected source. Mrs. Eleanor Whitman, the wife of the bank president in Cedar Creek, came to visit one day. She was a refined woman in her 50s, known for her charitable work and her interest in education. "Mr. Morrison," she said as we sat on my porch, "I've heard about your situation with young Lucy. What about it? I think what you've done is admirable, taking in an orphan child, giving her a home and an education. But I'm concerned about her social development." "How so?" "She needs to be around other children, Mr. Morrison. She needs to learn how to interact with her peers, how to make friends. That's an important part of growing up. I know that. But the school is too far away for daily attendance." "What if—" "I told you there was another option." Mrs. Whitman explained that she had been working with several other families in the area to establish a small school closer to the ranches. They had found a teacher, a young woman named Miss Sarah Collins, who had recently moved to Texas from back east. "We're planning to hold classes in the old church building about 5 miles from here," Mrs. Whitman said. "It would serve the children from the surrounding ranches. Lucy would be able to attend regularly, and she'd be with children her own age." "That sounds perfect. What do you need from me?" "Just your support, and a small contribution to help pay the teacher's salary and maintain the building." "You have both." When I told Lucy about the school, she was both excited and nervous. What if the other children don't like me? She asked. Why wouldn't they like you? Because I'm different. Because I was living on the streets. Because I stole. Lucy, you listen to me. You are not defined by your past. You are defined by who you are now and who you choose to become. And you are a wonderful, kind, intelligent little girl. Any child would be lucky to have you as a friend. Do you really think so? I know so. The school opened in September, and I rode with Lucy to her first day. She was nervous, clutching my hand as we walked into the small building that had been converted into a classroom. Miss Collins was a young woman in her 20s, with kind eyes and a warm smile. She immediately put Lucy at ease, introducing her to the other children and finding her a seat near the front of the room. There were 8 children in total, ranging in age from 6 to 12. They were the sons and daughters of local ranchers and farmers, and they welcomed Lucy with the easy acceptance that children often show. I'll be back to pick you up this afternoon, I told Lucy as I prepared to leave. You promise? I promise. That afternoon, when I returned to collect Lucy, she was practically glowing with excitement. Jake, I made friends, she announced as soon as she saw me. There's Mary, and Tom, and Sarah, and they all want to play with me tomorrow. That's wonderful, Lucy. And Miss Collins says I'm very smart. She says I read better than most children my age. I'm proud of you. As we rode home, Lucy chattered excitedly about her day, telling me about the lessons, the games they played at recess, and the friends she'd made. It was the happiest I'd seen her since she'd come to live with me. Over the following weeks, Lucy thrived at school. She made friends easily, excelled in her studies, and began to show the confidence that had been beaten down by her difficult early life. She was becoming the child she was meant to be, but not everyone was happy about Lucy's transformation. One day, about a month after school started, Harold Garrett showed up at my ranch. Morrison, he said as I came out of the barn, we need to talk. What about that little thief you took in? Her name is Lucy, and she's not a thief. She's not a thief. Been telling people in town that I tied her to a tree. She's making me look bad. You tied her to a tree, Garrett. That's not her fault. I was disciplining her for stealing. But now people are treating me like I'm some kind of monster. If the shoe fits, Garrett's face reddened. I want you to tell her to stop spreading lies about me. They're not lies, and I'm not going to tell her anything. If you don't like people knowing what you did, maybe you shouldn't have done it. That little girl is trouble, Morrison. She's going to bring you nothing but heartache. The only trouble I see is you standing on my property making threats. I'm not making threats. I'm giving you friendly advice. Well, here's some friendly advice for you, Garrett. Stay away from Lucy. Stay away from my ranch. And if I hear that you've been bothering her at school or anywhere else, you'll answer to me. Garrett glared at me for a moment, then turned and walked back to his horse. You'll regret this, Morrison. That girl is bad news. After he left, I found Lucy in the house, working on her homework. She looked up at me with concern. Was that Mr. Garrett? She asked. Yes. What did he want? Nothing important. Don't worry about it. But I could see the fear in her eyes, and I knew that Garrett's visit had brought back bad memories for her. Jake, she said quietly, he's not going to take me away, is he? No, Lucy, nobody is going to take you away. You're my daughter now, and I'll protect you, your daughter, if you want to be. Tears filled her eyes. I'd like that more than anything. Then it's settled. You're Lucy Morrison now. That night, as I tucked Lucy into bed, she looked up at me with eyes full of love and trust. Jake, can I ask you something? Of course. Why did you save me that day? You could have just left me tied to that tree because it was the right thing to do, but lots of people saw me there. Other people rode past that tree. Why didn't they help me? It was a good question, and one I'd thought about myself. I don't know, Lucy. Maybe they were afraid, or maybe they just didn't want to get involved. But I couldn't ride away and leave a child in trouble. I'm glad you couldn't. So am I, Jake. Yes, I love you. I love you too, Lucy, more than you'll ever. Nope. As I left her room and prepared for bed myself, I reflected on how much my life had changed. 6 months ago, I'd been a solitary rancher with no responsibilities beyond my livestock. Now I was a father, with all the joys and worries that came with that role. Lucy had brought purpose to my life that I'd never known I was missing. She'd filled my house with laughter and love, and she'd shown me that family isn't just about blood. It's about choice, commitment, and unconditional love. I'd saved her from that tree, but in many ways, she'd saved me too. She'd saved me from a life of loneliness, from the emptiness that comes from having no one to care about and no one to care about you. As I drifted off to sleep, I thought about Harold Garrett's warning that Lucy would bring me nothing but heartache. He couldn't have been more wrong. Lucy had brought me nothing but joy, and I couldn't imagine my life without her. She was my daughter now, in every way that mattered, and I would spend the rest of my life making sure she knew how loved and valued she was. The cowboy who had found a child tied to a tree had discovered something more precious than gold. He had discovered the transformative power of love and the true meaning of family. That as Lucy's second year with me began, our life together had settled into a comfortable rhythm. She was excelling in school, had made several close friends, and was becoming more confident and outgoing with each passing day. The frightened, hungry child I'd found tied to a tree had blossomed into a bright, happy little girl who filled my days with laughter and purpose. But as Lucy grew older, I began to realize that there were aspects of raising a daughter that I was woefully unprepared for. She was approaching her 10th birthday, and I could see that she was beginning to need guidance that I, as a bachelor cowboy, simply couldn't provide. The realization hit me most clearly one morning when Lucy came to breakfast looking distressed. "Jake," she said hesitantly, "I need to ask you something, but it's kind of embarrassing." "You can ask me anything, Lucy. You know that." "Well, Mary at school was talking about things that happen to girls when they get older, and I don't understand, and I don't know who to ask." I felt my face grow hot. This was exactly the kind of situation I'd been dreading. "What kind of things?" She said. "That girls, that they change, that their bodies change." And she said I should ask my mother about it, but I don't have a mother. My heart ached for her. "Lucy, you're right that girls do change as they grow up. It's natural and normal. But you're also right that these are things that are usually explained by a mother or another woman. So what do I do? Let me think about it. There are some good women in town who might be able to help us." The person I thought of immediately was Mrs. Eleanor Whitman. She had been instrumental in getting the school started, and she had always shown a special interest in Lucy's welfare. She was a mother herself, with 2 grown daughters, and she had the kind of gentle wisdom that Lucy needed. That afternoon, I rode into town and visited Mrs. Whitman at her home. She received me in her parlor, and I explained the situation as delicately as I could. "Mr. Morrison," she said when I finished, "I think it's wonderful that Lucy felt comfortable enough to come to you with her questions. That shows how much she trusts you. But I don't know how to answer them." "Of course you don't. These are things that require a woman's perspective. I'd be happy to talk with Lucy, if you'd like. I'd be very grateful. But I think we should consider something else as well." "What's that?" "Lucy is at an age where she needs more than just occasional guidance from women. She needs regular female companionship, someone who can be a mother figure to her." "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting that you might want to consider marriage, Mr. Morrison. Not just for Lucy's sake, but for your own as well." The idea of marriage had never seriously crossed my mind. I'd been content with my bachelor life, and after taking Lucy in, I'd been too focused on learning to be a father to think about romance. I wouldn't know where to start, I admitted. "Well, as it happens, I might have a suggestion." Mrs. Whitman told me about her niece, Catherine, who had recently moved to Texas from Missouri. Catherine was 28 years old, a widow who had lost her husband in a farming accident 2 years earlier. She had no children of her own, but had always wanted them. "She's been staying with us while she decides what to do with her life," Mrs. Whitman explained. "She's a lovely woman, kind, intelligent, and wonderful with children. She's been helping at the school, and she's taken a particular interest in Lucy. Lucy's never mentioned her. That's because Catherine has been working with the younger children mostly, but she's asked about Lucy several times, and I think she'd be very interested in meeting you properly." I was skeptical. The idea of courting a woman, especially with the complication of Lucy to consider, seemed overwhelming. But Mrs. Whitman was persistent. "Why don't you come to dinner Sunday evening?" she suggested. "You and Lucy both. Catherine will be there, and you can meet her in a relaxed setting." "I don't know, Mr. Morrison. Lucy needs a mother figure, and you need a partner in raising her. At least meet Catherine and see what you think." Reluctantly, I agreed. When I told Lucy about the dinner invitation, she was excited. "We're going to eat at Mrs. Whitman's house? With real china and everything." "That's right. And there'll be another lady there, Mrs. Whitman's niece. Her name is Catherine." "What's she like?" "I don't know yet. We'll find out together." Sunday evening arrived, and Lucy and I dressed in our best clothes for the dinner. Lucy wore a blue dress that Mrs. Whitman had helped me pick out for her, and I wore my good suit, the one I'd bought for church services but rarely had occasion to wear. The Whitman house was elegant, with fine furniture and beautiful decorations. Lucy was wide-eyed as we were shown into the parlor, where Mrs. Whitman introduced us to her niece. Catherine was a lovely woman, with auburn hair and gentle brown eyes. She was dressed simply but elegantly, and she had a warm smile that immediately put me at ease. "Mr. Morrison," she said as we were introduced, "I've heard so much about you and Lucy. What you've done for her is truly admirable." "Thank you, ma'am." "And Lucy," Catherine said, kneeling down to Lucy's level, "I've seen you at school. You're one of Miss Collins' best students." Lucy beamed with pride. "I like school. I want to be a doctor someday." "That's a wonderful goal. I'm sure you'll make an excellent doctor." During dinner, I found myself impressed by Catherine's intelligence and warmth. She asked thoughtful questions about the ranch, about Lucy's progress in school, and about our life together. She seemed genuinely interested, not just making polite conversation, but what impressed me most was the way she interacted with Lucy. She treated her with respect and genuine affection, asking about her interests and listening carefully to her answers. Lucy, who was sometimes shy around new adults, seemed to take to Catherine immediately. After dinner, while Mrs. Whitman and I discussed ranch business, Catherine and Lucy went to the garden to look at the flowers. Through the window, I could see them talking and laughing together, and Lucy looked happier than I'd seen her in weeks. She's wonderful with children, Mrs. Whitman observed, following my gaze. Yes, she is. Catherine lost a baby early in her marriage. She's always regretted not having children of her own. I'm sorry to hear that. She sees Lucy as a gift. Mr. Morrison a chance to be the mother she's always wanted to be. When it was time to leave, Catherine walked us to our wagon. Mr. Morrison, she said, I hope you'll consider letting me help with Lucy's education. I was a teacher before I married, and I'd love to work with her on some of the subjects that might be difficult for her. That's very kind of you. It's not kindness, it's genuine interest. Lucy is a special child, and she deserves every opportunity to succeed. On the ride home, Lucy was full of chatter about Catherine. Jake, I really like Mrs. Catherine. She's so nice, and she knows so much about everything. Did you know she used to be a teacher? And she's read all the books I want to read. She does seem very nice. Do you think we'll see her again? I think we might. Over the following weeks, Catherine began visiting the ranch regularly. She would help Lucy with her studies, teach her things about cooking and sewing that I couldn't, and gradually became a regular part of our lives. I found myself looking forward to her visits more and more. Catherine was easy to talk to, and she had a way of making our simple ranch house feel more like a home. She would bring flowers for the table, help with cooking, and fill the house with the kind of warmth that only a woman can provide. But more than that, I was falling in love with her. It wasn't the passionate, overwhelming love of youth, but something deeper and more mature. It was the love of a man who had found his perfect partner, someone who complimented him and made him better than he was alone. The turning point came one evening when Lucy had a particularly bad nightmare. She woke up screaming, and nothing I did seemed to comfort her. Catherine was visiting that evening, and she immediately went to Lucy's room. Sweetheart, what's wrong? She asked, sitting on the bed and gathering Lucy into her arms. I dreamed that Mr. Garrett came back, Lucy sobbed. I dreamed that he tied me to the tree again, and nobody came to help me. Oh, honey, that's never going to happen. Jake would never let anyone hurt you. But what if he's not there? What if he goes away like my papa did? Catherine looked at me over Lucy's head, and I saw understanding in her eyes. Lucy, she said gently, Jake is never going to leave you. He loves you too much. And you know what? I love you too. And I'm not going anywhere either. Really? You're stuck with both of us. Lucy giggled through her tears. I'd like that. So would I. After Lucy fell back asleep, Catherine and I sat on the porch talking. She's afraid of being abandoned again. Catherine said, that's why she has the nightmares. I know. I've tried to reassure her, but she needs more than reassurance. She needs security. She needs to know that she has a real family that will never leave her. She has that with me. She has a father who loves her, but she also needs a mother. I looked at Catherine in the moonlight, and I knew that this was the moment I'd been building toward. Catherine, I said, I need to ask you something. What? I need to ask if you'd consider marrying me. Not just for Lucy's sake, but because I've come to love you. Because I can't imagine my life without you in it. Catherine smiled, and I saw tears in her eyes. Jake Morrison, I thought you'd never ask. Is that a yes? That's definitely a yes. We were married a month later in a simple ceremony at the church in Cedar Creek. Lucy was our maid of honor, beaming with joy as she watched us exchange vows. She had helped Catherine pick out her dress, and she had insisted on making the wedding cake herself. Now we're a real family, she said as we cut the cake. A mama, a papa, and a daughter. We've always been a real family, I told her, but now we're complete. The years that followed were the happiest of my life. Catherine proved to be everything I'd hoped for and more. She was a wonderful mother to Lucy, helping her navigate the challenges of growing up while encouraging her dreams and ambitions. Lucy thrived under Catherine's guidance. She continued to excel in school, and when she was old enough, we sent her to a boarding school in San Antonio where she could get the advanced education she needed to pursue her dream of becoming a doctor. She wrote to us regularly, telling us about her studies and her plans for the future. In every letter, she thanked us for giving her the chance to become the person she was meant to be. I know I'm not your daughter by blood, she wrote in one letter, but you're more my parents than anyone else could ever be. You saved me from more than just that tree. You saved me from a life without love, without hope, without possibilities. Catherine and I had 2 children of our own, a son we named Thomas and a daughter we named Eleanor, after Mrs. Whitman. But Lucy was always our first child, the one who had brought us together and taught us what it meant to be a family. That when Lucy graduated from medical school, we were there to watch her receive her diploma. She was the first woman doctor in our part of Texas, and she was determined to use her skills to help children who, like her, had been forgotten by society. I want to make sure that no child ever has to go through what I went through, she told us. I want to be the person who helps them when no one else will. As I watched my daughter, because that's what she was, in every way that mattered, except her diploma, I thought about that day by Willow Creek when I'd found her tied to a tree. I'd thought I was saving her, but in reality, she had saved She had saved me from a life of loneliness and given me a purpose I'd never known I was missing. She had brought Catherine into my life, and together they had created a family that was built not on blood, but on love, commitment, and the belief that everyone deserves a chance at happiness. The cowboy who had seen a child tied to a tree for stealing bread had discovered that sometimes the greatest treasures are found in the most unexpected places, and sometimes, when you open your heart to help someone else, you end up saving yourself. The end.